In the land of Israel, there lived a prophet by the name of Samuel. God told Samuel to go to Bethlehem, where he would find a young boy named David. God told Samuel to anoint David as the new king of Israel. He was to replace Saul as king, because Saul had turned away from the Lord. At that time, Saul and the men of Israel camped in the Valley of Elah, where they were preparing to fight the Philistine army. David's brothers were among the men of Israel. So David traveled to the valley to bring more food and supplies to his brothers. As he stood on the hill overlooking the valley, he could see both armies on either side. When David arrived at his brothers, he found them hiding from the scary Philistine army. The Philistines were great warriors and many in number. For 40 days they had been shouting insults at the men of Israel, calling them cowards. In the Philistine army, there was a man called Goliath. He was bigger and scarier than any of the other Philistine men. He was a giant. Goliath was afraid of no one and challenged the men of Israel to come out and fight him. But everyone was too afraid. Day and night, Goliath mocked the God of Israel and the army of Saul. While David was with his brothers, he saw Goliath come out, and he heard his insults. David couldn't believe it. Now David was a brave young man, and he loved the Lord. He would not stand to hear Goliath insult God or his people any longer. Word got around of David's inquiries about Goliath, and King Saul sent for him. With great courage, David told Saul that he would fight him. Saul knew the Lord was with David, so he agreed to David's request. Saul clothed David with his armor, his sword and shield, but they were too heavy, and David could not even walk. In the end, David decided to fight Goliath with his slingshot, the one weapon he used as a shepherd and knew best. David went outside, picked up 5 stones, and walked towards Goliath. Goliath laughed at David. The Spirit of God came upon David and empowered him with courage and bravery to fight Goliath the giant. David knew he could not do this alone, so he trusted God to give him and Israel the victory. As Goliath charged towards David, David shouted, "You come to me with a sword, spear, and shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." So David took up his slingshot, put in one of the 5 stones, and started swinging it in the direction of Goliath. As Goliath drew near, David released the stone, and with great force it struck Goliath in the middle of his forehead. Instantly, the giant fell to the ground on his face and died. That day, God gave David and Israel the victory. David ran towards Goliath and stood over his body. David took Goliath's sword and cut off his head. When the Philistine army saw this, they were afraid and ran away. When the Spirit of God came upon David, who was just a little shepherd boy, he became a brave warrior who defeated a giant.